Okay, I think the streaming has started.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay, Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley's Wednesday evening Bhagavad Gita class. And before we get started with today's topic, we will do kirtans and prayers to seek the blessings of our gurus and the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna himself. So Prabhu, you can share the
Yes.
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radhe Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Narahari Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Narahari Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Shri Harinam Sankirtana ki jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. So thank you for participating in this beautiful bhajan, and in today's session we'll also see the important role of having kirtans and bhajans during the process of transformation. So next we will get started with the prayers. Raghu, you can share the prayers. Thank you. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah नमो ब्राह्मण्यदेवाय गोब्राह्मणहिताय च जगद्धिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः. Okay, thank you very much. I seek all of your blessings so that I can speak something that can benefit all of you in the service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So let me share my screen. Prabhu, please let me know when you can see the screen.
Yes, Prabhu, you can see the screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So today's topic is on the theme of fit, which is from information to transformation. So all of us are very well aware of being fit, and some of us, take up physical fitness to go to gym. Some of us take up to various mental exercises or intellectual exercises to stay fit in those realms. And when it comes to spiritual fitness, we often find that there is a lot of information that we are exposed to in the spiritual journey, and it leads to transformation. But how does this happen in the first place? And is what kind of information is conducive for transformation, whether it be material or spiritual? So we'll take a look at all of that along with some context. So today we'll be looking at what is the history of information as an entity. So most of us take information for granted in this day and age of internet, and more so with the growth of AI and LLMs. And we'll also look at what is the nature of information. What does it mean to accept or give information? And what is information and how is it related to knowledge? Are both the same? And next we'll look at, from knowledge, how do one get to transformation? So this was a topic that my wife had asked me long ago, several years ago, and ever since I had been studying about it from various scriptures and listening to various lectures. So I think this will be helpful to all of us. So how do we actually get from knowledge to transformation, from theory to realization? And then the summary. So as far as information is concerned, during the age of the ancient world, Vedic era and previously, we had most of the information transmitted through oral means, meaning the guru would speak and the disciples would listen. There is no notion of writing. It was purely through the ears. And later on, at the beginning of Kali Yuga, Vyasadeva, in Srimad Bhagavatam it is mentioned that he has distilled the essence of the Vedic scriptures in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also categorized all the Vedic scriptures into 4 Vedas. Previously it was 1, and people would memorize from one generation to the next. But with declining capability of memory, beginning with Kali Yuga, it was presented in a visual manner through writing. So that's where writing was introduced, and then we have it through manuscripts, ancient manuscripts, and the more recent ones. That's the diagram you see here. And then more modern, we have newspapers. So until this age, the information would be more or less closed, in the sense only closed circles would get to hear it. And then visual information was still closed, but it was slowly starting to open up for the general mass of the world. And then came the age of digital information, which is currently continuing as well, where there is a widespread usage of the internet and social media, through which information propagates instantly. And then we are in the age of generative information as well, where the information produced by LLMs could be synthetic, bearing more or less no resemblance to the real world. So all these types of information, as you see progressively from the ancient era to the modern, has just increased accessibility as well as volume of information that's available to a person. So we'll see why this is being presented. This is to give you context of how there is increased accessibility. So previously we saw the transmission, now we'll see the consumption. So when information is transmitted through all these different media, somebody is consuming it as well. You and me end up as the consumer. And certainly, if we were born several hundred years ago, compared to that, we have increased accessibility today. And also, by material metrics, we have better productivity and clarity on some topics that would have possibly taken months, if not years, to gather all the content through letters and so on. But then we see that along with these pros or positive effects of this widespread, rampant increase of information, there are also cons, which are in the form of cognitive overload from exposure to irrelevant topics that can cloud, and worse, it can hang the brain more or less. It can stop our brains from functioning as normal. And there is well-known peer-reviewed research on how this kind of overexposure to information can cause digital dementia and brain rot. So these are terms, you can look it up. So cognitive decline has been more prevalent and more or less correlated with the excessive consumption of information, primarily in the age of social media and the internet. And along with that, we also have problems such as infomania, where there is addiction to information. We simply cannot sit without gathering information. So there is some kind of an addiction. So we'll delve into why this happens through the eyes of the Bhagavad Gita and what the solutions are. But it's important to as much as we appreciate the positive effects, we also should be well aware of the negative effects that rampant spread of information has caused. So now, in order to see what is information through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita, we will introduce some terminology here. So information is the content that underpins the existence. So it may sound abstract, but that's because every entity that we take in this material world always has something associated with it that the human mind can process. And that content is called Vishaya. So this Vishaya can be translated as information, subject, topic, or just matter as well. So depending on the context at hand. And this is also called Indriyartha, meaning it is the content in which the senses seek meaning, or what we find meaningful to us. And who is the consumer of this information? It's the mind. And it is through the senses that the mind acquires information. For example, if you are watching this video, there is a laptop that is giving some sound and visuals through your monitor, and that is being processed through the eyes and the ears to reach your mind, which is the consumer of this information. So, and the mind makes sense of what is being presented. Therefore, the mind, it's ultimately, this information is like food for thought, literally. Actually, this is food in the form of thought. That's what information is. So we get food for the mind, and based on this information, the mind cultivates desires and the intelligence decides. So we'll see what this is in a minute. So information, if when we go into the etymology of the word, it comes from the verb inform, and in Latin it's split into in and formare, or you can simply think of it as into form. So what is it forming? Based on previous, like French dictionaries with variants of the name, what is information forming is, it's actually forming part of the mind, it's shaping the mind. So this is exactly what is described in the Bhagavad Gita. How the Vishayas, or the information consumed by the mind, are stored inside in the form of impressions or samskaras. So samskaras are nothing but impinging information on our subtle consciousness. So we can call it chitta. So every information that we eat through our minds goes right into our chitta and forms samskaras. If we only eat it once, it's a faint impression, faint samskara. If we start eating it repeatedly, then we strengthen that samskara and it becomes a very prominent feature in our subtle existence or chitta. And what does this form? It gives rise to a disposition. We'll see how impression changes into a disposition shortly, both material and spiritual. This disposition is called bhava. So the impressions have the capability of transforming our subtle existence in the form of shaping parts of the mind, and hence shaping the mind at large. So this disposition is called bhava. So we see this in different places in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, there are two things that happen. One is when the disposition of a person is getting changed, the person is reorienting themselves, then that also shapes their mind and intelligence. Now, information is being acted upon by the mind and intelligence. If this mind intelligence itself changes based on the information, then you have a new mind and new intelligence that is acting upon the same information. So mind and intelligence are shaped by the disposition, as well as in the long run, as well as by the impressions in the short run. So, and both of these will make a person seek out for more information. So the inquisitive people may seek out for more information, but soon it turns into an addiction, leading to cognitive overload. That's that psychology term for information overloading of the consciousness. Now, because of this, this cycle never seems to end. So there is always craving. Just like there is craving for different food items, there is also craving for information. There is anticipation for information. and because of that there are more samskaras that are created and more bhavas that are generated in the long run. So this is what is happening when we feed on information, right? And because of this, just like how we have food, it's important to know what information one is consuming. So just to give an analogy of the different stages of digestion of food, and compared it to different stages of digestion of information. So when we eat food, there is ingestion of what content we take through the mouth. It goes through the esophagus, there is peristalsis, and goes to the digestive walls in the stomach, and then there is some digestion that happens, and then from there there is it goes into the small intestine, and then there is absorption of nutrients from there, and then there is rejuvenation to the body because of nutrients getting absorbed from the food that is digested, and the food is ingested through the mouth. So essentially you can think of it as this 4-staged process. Similarly, there is information that is eaten or consumed, and the way it gets digested is through contemplation, and we'll see what happens when the contemplation involves an impure mind or impure buddhi and purified buddhi. Just hold on that thought of what impure and pure mean in this context. And once contemplation stage is complete, we try to assimilate that into our rest of our being. So that's when we reorient ourselves based on the information. So let's say somebody got interested in a new topic, let's say like about visiting a foreign country, let's say India. So if somebody wants to know about it due to interest, they will start studying, they'll start assimilating information, and then that makes them interested in some or the other aspect, and because of that they may change their disposition, they may change their views, they may end up visiting the country and so on. So there is some kind of a reorientation that's happening with the person, and it's evident in the either the worldview or the decisions the person makes, and it could lead to transformations. Whether it is good or bad is a different story, but it can lead to a transformation based on the starting point, which is gathering information. Therefore, there is some path by which information results in transformation, and how exactly this happens, we'll see. Now, we previously saw that on one end there is amazing material progress due to this proliferation of information and instant access to information, and on the other we also see there is steep decline in cognitive health, and there are several studies that show how using tools like LLMs or even the digital assists, they can lower the memory and critical thinking of people. Why? Because it's pretty much like standing with by supporting with a crutch. That is good as long as it's only supporting, but in the process if we forget to walk, then it's going to impede our natural abilities. So just like when maps, digital apps in the form of showing maps for navigation started, previously people used to remember as much routes as they could, and then maybe have some paper maps here and there. But as soon as the app started, we seldom remember even the common routes. So, and similarly, this is because we are too reliant on the information from the apps. Similarly, if you are too reliant for thinking and reasoning on LLMs and other types of gadgets, slowly we are transferring our um, mm, cognitive health, or cognitive debt is what is getting developed. So there is a decline in cognitive health. Now, from the point of view of information, it is merely like a tool, and tools require manuals so that we can know what is the purpose for which it exists and what is the how to operate with that tool. So this is extremely important because the information in itself, it may seem engaging, but what does it engage us in? So that's an important consideration. So we shouldn't engage in information just for titillating our senses, just for stimulating, just for some sense gratification. Why? Because we previously saw it results in a vicious cycle. And Krishna mentions this in Bhagavad Gita 2.62 and 63. We'll look at it. And before then, so this is a key consideration that we are missing. Why there are positive effects for some based on this proliferated information, and why there are negative effects? Because the notion of purpose and qualification are absent. So when we consume any food, why do we do that? Well, some may say for taste, but ultimately, biology wise, nature wise, it's giving nourishment to the body and maybe to the mind as well in the form of taste and so on. So nourishment is the key factor. Similarly, the purpose of eating information or consuming information should be for the spiritual upliftment. Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita 17.16. Manaprasada saumyatvam maunam atma vinigraha bhava samshuddhirityetat tapo manasa muchyate. We previously saw that information is consumed by who? The mind. And therefore it affects the state of the mind. And the state of the mind is called bhava. The permanent disposition of the mind is called bhava. And purification of that bhava is what is affected by the information we consume. Therefore, it's important to be mindful of the information we consume as to how it relates with our purpose, which is spiritual upliftment or purification of the mind, by which we uplift ourselves, uplift spiritually. Now, the other important consideration is qualification or the adhikar. The same information given to different beings results in different outcomes from them. What is a good example of this? So, let's say if somebody has jaundice, and if somebody is giving them the information that if you go to so and so place, you will get lot of sweets that are prepared with oil, let's say. So now eating oily sweets is harmful for the person. But if the person is getting that information, then they become, they have a potential to act upon it and actually go consume that, due to which their health may degrade. Now the information itself is not a bad information or good information per se, but depending on whom it is given. Now, if it was given to somebody who is running a sweet shop and trying a different a variation of the sweet, and if they were given that information, maybe that would help them do their research and get a better quality product. However, depending on whom this information is given, it can have an adverse outcome as well. Therefore, the adhikara or the qualification to receive information is important. And hence Krishna also mentions at the end of the Bhagavad Gita what is the qualification of one to understand and appreciate the content. the spiritual content of the Bhagavad Gita. And we saw how even in case of material information, there is a qualification that can determine whether the outcome is beneficial or not. Hence, the Shastras always have this in consideration. So if you take any Shastra, usually there are 4 things that are mentioned. Prayojana, the purpose of that Shastra existing. Vishaya, what's the content? What is it about? So purpose is what does it lead to if you undertake that study or if you take shelter of that Shastra. And Vishaya is the content. Adhikari is the one who is eligible to go through that content or study that content, take shelter of that Shastra and attain the Prayojana mentioned in the Shastra. And then there is a Sambandha as to how the content results in the Prayojana or the fruit when it is consumed systematically. So the qualified consumer is able to make use of the information to achieve the purpose. So this is a very important consideration before we consume any content. The reality of today's world, unfortunately, is there is one video after the other which keeps scrolling, short form videos, and those who even have things to do get distracted just looking at videos one after the other, and only when studies tell us that it's associated with reducing attention spans and things like that, then we start thinking, oh yeah, this is important. But then due to the strong influence of the habit, again one gets falls prey to the that kind of a habit, so that kind of a practice. So therefore it's important that we assess, just like what we eat matters to us, similarly what we eat through our mind also matters to us all the more, because our mind is more intimately connected with our spiritual realization than merely the body. So therefore purification of the mind and the associated impressions is very important. Now we saw that information can lead to transformation. This transformation can be twofold. One is the material transformation, which can either let the person live in this temporary world, and eventually it can be degrading, either in the form of mental collapse. If too much information is just bombarded onto the consciousness, the person may feel restless and it may even lead to collapse. And on the other hand, if one is repeatedly consuming material information of a specific kind, then if it is if the nature of the information is degrading and one is putting more and more such samskaras or impressions, then one's bhava can change to tamo bhava, or degraded disposition. So that is possible by consuming material knowledge which can be in Rajasic or Tamasic. We'll see what they are, what these modes are. Krishna defines this in the Bhagavad Gita. And on the other hand, when the information is consumed in a manner that is transcendental. Now it could be the same information one is trying to use for a particular spiritual cause, or it could be spiritual information directly from the scriptures or the words of the Guru that can benefit one to uplift themselves spiritually. Now we see that both of these are transformations. One is a material transformation that results in falling of the consciousness into the material pool, and the other is spiritual information that uplifts one to realize their spiritual identity. Now another important consideration here is information always comes from a source, and in spiritual circles, for example, it's important that we listen from those who have embodied that information, meaning they are living the tradition. Therefore it's important to not only have knowledge about a particular tradition or a set of spiritual practices, but also to embody that tradition or live that tradition. Because only then one can actually realize why the scriptures are saying what they are saying, and one can present it in a manner relatable to time, place, and circumstances to transform the hearts of other beings. Therefore, it's important to live the tradition while appreciating the spiritual knowledge presented therein. Now, we saw there are two types of transformations. One is a material transformation, other is a spiritual transformation. The nature of material transformation, as given in Srimad Bhagavad Gita 2.62 and 63, which states, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Bhijayate Krodad Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibhrama Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinasho Buddhinashat Pranashyati. So, the meaning of that is, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, or strong material desire develops, and from lust, anger arises. So, if that desire is not getting fulfilled, the person may get angry, since the person is too attached to fulfilling the desires, but it's not getting fulfilled. And for the second verse, from such anger, complete delusion arises, and from such delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So this is the cycle that Krishna discusses. So how it starts is contemplation on the sense objects. So we discussed information. Information is nothing but Vishaya. So whose Vishaya is information? It's the Vishaya of the mind. The mind thrives on information. So when we are contemplating on sense objects, it's like the mind eating its food, which is information. And depending on what kind of information it chewed upon, there is proximity and attachment. So this is about material information. So there is proximity and attachment that develops due to it. Now, because of that strong attachment to a particular desire, to a particular information, the mind starts desiring it. So attachment causes desire, and when the desire is not fulfilled, there is anger, and in anger the person loses situational awareness. This is a common understanding that when a person gets angry, they don't know what's going on, or they may repent or regret what they are doing in anger. So that is delusion, meaning their awareness is covered due to anger. And when the awareness is covered, when the person is deluded, it leads to failure of memory, meaning they cannot recollect even the good teachings they must have heard previously. And because of that bewilderment, there is destruction of intelligence. Why? Because the nature of information that's being consumed has a direct bearing on the intelligence as well. When there is a memory failure, the intelligence has nothing to work with. If you want to make a decision, you need data, and then we can have data driven decision making. If there is no data because of memory corruption, there is no intelligence that can really be used. So it destroys the intelligence because there is nothing to work with. And when the intelligence is destroyed, buddhi nashat pranashyati, the consciousness falls down into the material pool. The person may again, because of this wrong conditioning, may again engage in contemplating on harmful sense objects, and so on. This cycle keeps on continuing, and hence it just makes the person fall more and more and more. So that's the vicious cycle of material transformation. Now we see that there is so much on information that we need to be cautious about. But then, what is this information and how is it related to knowledge? So Krishna answers this question in two places in the Bhagavad Gita. The first is when he discusses the qualities what go into constituting knowledge. So that's in the 13th chapter, verses 8 through 12. We'll look at it in a moment. And then the other place is in Bhagavad Gita 18.20 to 22. So he describes knowledge in the three modes. So the word used for knowledge is jnanam. So jnanam, we'll see that for sattva guna, Krishna says sarva bhuteshu yenaikam bhavam avyayam ikshate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajnanam viddhi satvikam. So that knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities, though they are divided into innumerable forms, you should understand to be in the mode of goodness. Now you may be thinking, we were looking at information, and to decide what is information and what is knowledge, we are looking at knowledge in three different modes. So we'll see that this kind of knowledge, the effect of that is liberating, and Krishna uses this elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, we'll see in a moment. So that information which liberates us from material existence is considered knowledge. Now, what about the other types of knowledge? Yes, they are knowledge as well, but then they are not knowledge in the true sense of it. They are not liberating us. They are causing bondage. So, for example, knowledge in Rajoguna. पृथक्त्वेन तु यज्ञानं नाना भावान् पृथक् विधान् वेत्ति सर्वेषु भूतेषु तज्ज्ञानं विद्धि राजसम. That knowledge by which one sees that in every different body there is a different type of living entity. You should understand to be in the mode of passion. So what does this cause? This causes comparisons, because nana bhavan, there are one person thinks that okay, this is a different person, they have that, I don't have this, and so on. So it causes restlessness in the mind. So this is the property of Rajoguna, to initiate activity, and in this case it causes confusion, meaning there is no clear knowledge as in Sattva-guna. At the same time, it is not fully wrong either, because there is some difference among the living beings, but not in the way the person understands it. In tamoguna, yattu kritsnavadekasmin karye saktamahaitukam atatva arthavad alpancha tat tamasa mudahrutam. And that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all in all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness. Now, this is like only seeing one aspect of the entire reality and forgetting the whole big picture, and just diving into the one aspect as though nothing else exists. So usually this is the kind of knowledge, or this is the kind of information that leads to fanaticism, thinking that nothing else exists and only one piece of the entire reality is all in all. So therefore that is considered to be knowledge in the mode of ignorance. So this is without knowledge of the truth. Atatva arthavat. So it's not tattva artha, it's atatva artha. So it has no resemblance to the entire reality. So it's based on falsity. So these are the three types of knowledge Krishna describes. And now, what is the differentiating factor between information and knowledge? We already got a hint of it. So the information conducive for spiritual realization is called knowledge. So in the Vedic scriptures, the goal is to free us from this suffering cycle of birth, old age, disease and death. And in order for that to happen, the person has to be free from material consciousness. And whatever goes into making that possible is conducive for spiritual realization. And such kind of information which is conducive for spiritual realization is called knowledge. And we see this very authentic, famous dictionary Amarkosha defines jnana as moksha upayogi buddhi, the intelligence that is useful for liberating oneself from the material world. So that's exactly what we arrived at from Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna also describes the characteristics of such jnana in the 13th chapter, verses 8 through 12. We'll see in a bit what that is about. So if these are actually long set of verses, but we are going to read them because they are extremely important to convey the concept of what constitutes knowledge. Amanitvam madambhitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stairyam atma vinigraha indriyartheshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityuchara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam asaktiranabhishvanga putradara grihadishu nityancha samachittatvam इष्टानिष्टोपपत्तिषु मयि चानन्ययोगेन भक्तिरव्यभिचारिणी विविक्तदेशसेवित्वम् अरतिर्जनसंसदि अध्यात्मज्ञाननित्यत्वं तत्त्वज्ञानार्थदर्शनम् एतज्ज्ञानमिति प्रोक्तम् अज्ञानं यत्ततोऽन्यथा. We'll see here, we'll read the translation. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So first time when I read this verse, it appeared like Krishna is talking about qualities. How do qualities constitute knowledge? And then we see the answer to that is because these qualities are the ones that are conducive for spiritual realization, just like we arrived at in the previous slide. So because these qualities are essential for attaining spiritual realization, these are classified as knowledge. That's the difference between information and knowledge. So knowledge embodies all the set of not just information but the changes that come about by that information. For example, if you take humility, pridelessness, non-violence, all these are qualities. When one is exposed to spiritual information that can bring about these qualities, such information is jnana, and at the same time those qualities that are formed on the basis of such information also constitute jnana because they are conducive for self-realization. So that is the importance of understanding information versus knowledge. In simply put, as far as a spiritual practitioner is concerned, information is that which is pretty much useless content as far as self-realization is concerned, and knowledge is the content that is useful for self-realization. Now what is useful, what is useless may be different depending on what is the adhikar, what is the qualification of the recipient and so on, but this is the basis. So if something is taking one closer to the purpose of spiritual realization, that constitutes knowledge for them. So now on the basis of different Upanishads as well as the Bhakti traditions, we'll see how knowledge actually leads to transformation. So this is a big mystery as to how just by reading or listening, how can a person transform and what does transformation entail. So the left one, let's focus on that first. So this is from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where Yajnavalkya is speaking to Maitri on what is the process of self-realization. So usually this is quoted in relation to Jnana Yoga, but we'll see the exact parallel also applies in Bhakti Yoga. So, Shravanam is the process of listening. Whom do we listen from? From the realized spiritual masters, from the realized sages, the scriptures, and so on. From one who is giving us the knowledge of the absolute truth. And they must be living the tradition. So, that is very important as well. And therefore, the examples are given such as if milk is touched by a snake, then the milk becomes poisoned as well, even if it looks like milk. Similarly, a person who is not living the tradition, even if they have theoretical understanding of that, if their living habits are opposite to the goal, that is not going to be fruitful. So, for example, in the context of the Bhakti traditions, when we hear about the Kaivalya or merging of the Jiva with the Supreme Lord, that means there is no notion of performing any bhakti, and therefore it is not conducive for bhakti realization. Therefore, the scriptures have many kinds of information depending on what is the whom it is meant for. Not everything is meant for everyone, and therefore it's important to stick to what the tradition teaches for that particular practice. In the Bhakti Yoga path, we stick to the Bhakti tradition and the Bhakti scriptures, which give us the appropriate means to realize. So, Shravanam is common to both the Jnana Marga and the Bhakti Marga. And the next stage, Yajnavalkya explains, is Manana. So, the corresponding stage to that in the Bhakti traditions described by Bhakti Vinod Thakur is Varana Dasha. So, Mananam involves contemplating or acceptance. So, Shravanam is listening, that's the middle table that you see here. It's listening. And of course, there are stages in it. One is circumstantial listening. So just one day you happen to end in a spiritual pilgrimage or a temple and somebody is speaking something you heard. So that can bring about some seed of faith. And then there is random listening. Someday I feel like listening something, other day I feel like listening something else. So one can listen randomly. So of course, all of this is spiritual listening because it's either rooted in the Shastra or in the realized souls, which is again present in the Shastra as well. So either one can hear random topics that they feel good about, but that is because they are doing it because they are feeling good about it. So that is also fine. And systematic listening to particular information in stages, like for example study of the Bhagavad Gita, systematic study, meaning one is constructing upon the previous content that is presented to them through the previous listening sessions. So that kind of systematic hearing is conducive to steady elevation. So we'll see that in a bit. And these are the three types of listening. And this is explained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. First one is called Shraddhahina. Shraddhahina is, they were not looking for it. There is no intention to or faith to go here, but they just ended up there somehow, edrichaya, by good fortune, by accident. And then they listened to that and developed some faith. And random hearing is called Kramahina. So it is there is no order, there is no Krama. And that also is helpful because ultimately what you are eating for the mind are spiritual impressions. So one day you will feel good about one particular aspect, and the other day you will feel good about some other aspect because you are reading a different Shastra, a different book. That is fine. So that also helps. And the most effective is called Kramashuddha Shravana Dasha, or where there is constant steady hearing on a particular topic built upon the concepts in stages. So this is the most organic way to listen a particular topic and continue in that without switching different books, different topics and so on. Why? Because such systematic exposure strengthens the mind, intelligence, and chitta to go toward a particular direction, and that direction is toward spiritual attainment of a particular bhava. So, therefore, it's important that there is steady listening. And Mananam or Varana Dasha is the stage of contemplation on the information that one hears and acceptance of it. In this process, what happens is there is usually tussle. The buddhi, by the way it is trained with either scientific impressions, critical thinking, or an artistic mind, and so on, either way, has notions about reality one way or the other. When the Shastric description is imprinted on this kind of a conditioned antakarana, or the mind, intelligence, and ego, some aspects one may appreciate, some aspects one may not appreciate, or one may appreciate nothing, one may appreciate everything, depending on which stage the purification is inside. So this is usually the stage of tussle where there is discussion, there is contemplation, and one slowly starts to get to acceptance. Why? Is it because it's a dogmatic thing? No. Because these words of the scriptures are directly coming from pure realization. So somebody has seen it. And who is this somebody? One whose internals have been completely and thoroughly purified. So therefore, such vision is transcendental vision. And because they have seen that transcendental vision and documented it in the form of the Shastras and the Guru Vakya, or the words of the Guru, such words have potency. And slowly the person, as they are more and more purified, or as they have more and more Shraddha, start to accept it. But still, this is very much theoretical. The third stage is called Nididhyasanam in the Jnana Marga, or Smarana Dasha in the Bhakti Marga. So this involves, now you no longer have doubts whether this is true or false and so on. That's all done and accepted at the Varana Dasha level or Mananam level. Nididhyasanam is absorption. Now you know a set of truths, spiritual truths that somebody has seen and realized, and you have complete faith in it. Therefore, you are meditating on those spiritual truths. So the famous example that's given in this regard is of a caterpillar trying to transform into a butterfly. So this is a mystery even to modern science as to how, even when certain parts of the brain cells are completely replaced, more or less the brain cells are replaced when but the caterpillar becomes butterfly. The Shastras give the example that because of strong contemplation, the caterpillar grows up to be a butterfly. So this meditation or fixed absorption in a set of spiritual truths, that is called Smarana Dasha in the Bhakti, and Nididhyasanam in the Jnana Yoga paths. This is profound absorption. So this is, like in the Ashtanga Yoga process, there is Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. These are the Dharana and Dhyana. So Dharana is concentration, and Dhyana is spontaneous absorption. So Smarana Dasha is also like that. In the initial stages of Smarana Dasha, one is forcing oneself to remember a particular spiritual identity. For example, Krishna as pastimes as described in Srimad Bhagavatam or through the Guru's mouth. So, but they have to force themselves because there is not much of taste. There is no ruchi. But slowly, as one starts developing ruchi, there is more and more capacity for spontaneous absorption that happens at the stage of asakti. So there is fixed absorption, and absorption means just like the moon can soak the sunlight and become illumined Similarly, the Lord's identity or the spiritual truth, the absolute spiritual truth, whether it be Brahman in the Jnana Marga or Param Brahma, the form of the Supreme Lord in Bhakti Marga, that spiritual truth is what uh, the mind or the Antakarana latches onto. And this is the stage where one is having asakti, or this is a part of Smaran Dasha or Nididhyasanam in the Jnana traditions. So this is the stage when the mind, upon repeated exposure to that spiritual truth with faith, is imbibing the property of that spiritual object. In we call it vastu in bhakti. So now Krishna's form, that's the vastu or the object of meditation, for example. And then the devotee starts to meditate so much so that the spiritual qualities start appearing in the person. Of course, this doesn't mean one becomes Krishna. It means one gets qualities which are spiritual, like some of the qualities exhibited by Krishna. And after this is the stage of Samadhi in the Jnana tradition and Apanna Dasha in the Bhakti tradition. Now, Apanna in Sanskrit means attaining. What is being attained? The vastu, the object that one is looking for. Actually, the meditation is not on the object directly, but one's position in relation to the object. It's called Swarupa. So, the Swarupa of the living being in the spiritual existence is meditated upon to get to the transformed state, which is called Swarupa Siddhi in Bhakti traditions or Samadhi in the Jnana traditions. So, now in the Apana Dasha, when the Samadhi is perfected, one gets what is called as Bhava. So this bhava is different from the material bhavas that we read previously. This bhava samshuddhi has happened. The mind is thoroughly purified now, and one is soaking in the form of meditation. So usually that is a particular form in the spiritual realm, and then one starts to attract those kind of qualities. And when those qualities start manifesting, the person attains a spiritual form. So this is the complete transformation that happens end to end, right from listening without faith to begin with, cultivating faith and purity along the process. And by divine grace, eventually one attains the spiritual reality, whether it be samadhi in jnana or bhava in bhakti. And so after that there is a stage called Vastu Siddhi, where in Bhakti the person also realizes the form of not only themselves but in relation to the ultimate truth in the form of Bhagavan. So that happens when one attains the complete God realization. Therefore, both these paths, we see that there is self-realization involved. In the path of Bhakti, there is also realization of the personal form of God. So that is what is the difference. But I wanted to illustrate the general process of how one goes from knowledge to transformation, and this is how it occurs. Now, from the point of view of an individual, so this is from the point of view of the process. We saw from the process point of view what are the stages that happen. From the individual point of view, what is happening within the self is given in the Bhakti tradition. Initially, when we come to the temple, there is some faith. Either we at least believe that they are doing something that's beneficial to us one way or the other, right? And then we go to the temple to begin with, and slowly that seed of faith is present. And by associating with the sadhus who are saintly in their conduct, and hence it's called sadhu sangha or saintly association. What happens is one slowly starts desiring to be like them, meaning they see some worth in it because of some faith and some favorable inclination. And then we start to practice bhajana kriya. And what is this? This is the stage where one thinks that okay, there must be some practical utility to the practices they are following, not just how they look, but also what they do. So, and then slowly we start embodying some of the practices into our own lives. So, this is where we are changing our lifestyle by the influence of saintly association. So, Bhagavatam describes that prasangam majaram pasham atmanak kavayo vidu saeva sadhushukruto mokshatvaram apavritam. The attachment one has toward material things. We saw previously how the attachment causes desire and then anger and then delusion and then bewilderment and then fall of intelligence and ultimately fall down. That is for the attachment to material things. However, when attachment is directed toward pure objects of spiritual impeccability, here I am saying objects just to generalize it, but here it's referring to the saintly association of pure devotees, then that association is contagious. Saeva sadhushu kruto mokshatvaram apavritam. It opens the doors to one's spiritual perfection. So the spiritual practice starts there, bhajana kriya. And in the bhajana kriya, what we do is the processes of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. So these are the 9 stages of bhakti that expedite one's spiritual transformation, of which the most important are Shravanam. We saw it was common to all the spiritual traditions. Listening. And Kirtanam. When we also share that knowledge with others, it grows within. As well as it is pleasing to listen, because it is based on the spiritual sweetness of the sweetest personality, who is Shri Krishna. And now Smaranam is the third. We saw how in Smarana Dasha or Nididhyasana there is remembrance, initially through effort and eventually through spontaneity. So Smaranam has to slowly happen so that we can absorb ourselves, just like the moon absorbs the rays of the sun and gets illumined. Similarly, we can absorb the spiritual rays and spiritual vibration and get energized spiritually. And slowly, when we also perform different services, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, all these are services to the deities, services to the devotees. What happens? Anartha nivritti happens. There is purification as well as artha pravritti, which is attraction toward the spiritual identity or spiritual reality that happens. And when these bhajana kriya activities are performed, initially there is no steadiness. One day I feel like coming to the temple, I'll show up. Other day I am feeling down, I'll not. One day I feel like chanting, I will. Other day there is no inclination to chant, so I'll take it easy. So this is anishtita bhajana kriya. In this, there is on and off purification. It's not, it's like, the fire is not getting lit constantly. So in Christianity, there is a saying of Jesus Christ, either be cold or hot, not lukewarm. So it's like the lukewarm state where there is anishtita bhajana kriya. There is, you are neither outside nor inside. You are somewhere in between. So one has to slowly cross that stage by strong shravanam and attain what is called nishtha. Nishtha is steadiness. When one is steadily situated in what? In the bhajana kriya, in the spiritual practice. Then what happens? Because the iron like living being is in contact with the fire like bhakti practice, the iron transforms like fire. It becomes like fire, meaning you put a paper onto that red hot iron rod, it's going to catch fire just like you put it in fire. So the iron rod of the living being transforms into fire uh, uh, red hot iron rod. So when that purification happens, because the purification has sufficiently happened, one slowly starts uncovering one's spiritual inclination slowly. Just like a person who has jaundice, when afflicted, cannot taste sweet, but as soon as the jaundice is removed, slowly the person attains the sweet taste of sweet substances. Similarly, the spiritual practices initially feeling like a burden now slowly start to make sense, and not just make sense but make sweet sense. So we start feeling good about them. So that is ruchi. And from ruchi, slowly when it deepens, one gains spiritual attachment. Now this the spiritual attachment is a deeper version of that. So here the ruchi could be, I like the I like the music of kirtan, therefore I would listen to it. Now the spiritual attachment is not just to the external form of the kirtan in the form of ragas and melodies and beats and sounds, but to the person for whom the kirtan is performed, which is their lordship Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So that way there is a spiritual attachment that gets developed, and by repeated exposure to that spiritual vastu or that spiritual substance or the spiritual entity, one develops slowly oneness with them in spiritual form. What does this mean? So in the spiritual reality, slowly we start aspiring for a particular position or particular role, and one slowly attains oneness with that role, and that is the spiritual perfection. So this is how there is complete transformation from somebody who just happened to be in a spiritual circle to somebody who has perfected their spiritual practice and attained the prayojana or the fruit, which is to get the swarup siddhi or one's spiritual realization, and vastu siddhi, which is God realization as well. So now the organic way to do this, we just saw that there is shravanam. So the evidence for this comes from Bhagavad Gita 4.34. तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्षन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So this is important, because they have seen the truth, they have lived the tradition, they are living the tradition, therefore they can impart that knowledge unto us. And once we have that knowledge through repeated shravanam, what we are doing? We are eating. Who is eating? The mind is eating. What is the mind eating? It is eating spiritual information or spiritual knowledge, because this is conducive for spiritual realization. Therefore it is knowledge, and it's spiritual knowledge. And through that one starts developing taste. As more and more purification happens, more and more taste arises. So this is the through smaranam. We saw smarana dasha. So after acceptance through varana dasha, there is smarana dasha, or the cultivation of remembrance and slowly taste. So ruchi asakti happen at that particular level. And the Third stage is cultivating the ability to absorb. So this happens through japa and seva. So we have heard when Srila Prabhupada says that 99% of advancement in bhakti happens through japa or chanting. So there are one of the ways to understand that is by japa one is purified and the buddhi becomes blessed. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso hyasho buddhi paryavatishtate. So when the buddhi becomes steady by prasada or by the divine grace, which comes very easily through japa, because nama is the most easy way of accessing Bhagavan. So in other words, the holy names of God are the most easy way to access God's grace, especially more so in this particular age of Kali Yuga. Therefore, japa is blessing us with a buddhi that is conducive to understand and appreciate the spiritual knowledge that was gained through Shravanam. And it's also the other way around. By proper Shravanam, one's japa becomes more absorbing and not just mechanical. And similarly, through seva, one also purifies both the body and the mind. And that way, one can better appreciate the spiritual truths. And therefore, this performance of bhakti kriya is extremely indispensable even to just understand the spiritual knowledge. And this is from Bhagavad Gita 4.38. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalenatmani vindati. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. So it's important that one practices the devotional service properly through bhajana kriya, and that way one can appreciate the jnana here, which is actually not different from bhakti, because this knowledge is concerning the form and activities of Bhagavan. So therefore, such special knowledge arises by practicing bhakti and purifying oneself through the limbs of bhakti practice as well. So automatically one gets purified as well as gains knowledge of the spiritual reality. That's the potency of the bhakti path. Jnana path requires extreme amount of austerity by our today's standards, and bhakti path not only not requires that, but also takes us to the highest reality of personally associating with the supreme spiritual truth in the form of Bhagavan. So just to summarize what we looked at, we saw how association with mundane information can degrade us, either by stagnating us in the sense of being cognitive overload, or making us restless by making us run around here and there without actually having a steady mind. So, and that is very unhelpful for spiritual realization. When the mind is not purified, when the mind is not steady, there is no nishtha. So slowly one has to control the mind, and that's not going to happen with just associating with mundane information constituted by rajas and tamas. Now, better than that is to associate with random spiritual knowledge, meaning any topic that you like, you can take a book, read about it. Now next day take another book, read something else. So then you will have a lot of spiritual concepts floating in the brain, in the mind. That is still good because you are associating with an object that is pure in its nature. But of course, it's just that the bhava is not fixed in one or the other. It's just floating around, and it's just okay, I'll do whatever I like. Ultimately, the faith is toward one's likes and dislikes. So it's unsteady elevation. It is also beneficial because the contact is with pure spiritual truth. But the most beneficial is systematic and consistent association with spiritual truths. So this is what is the most beneficial because it helps one solidify previous concepts related to the same body of knowledge and build upon it to attain um nishtha and beyond. So which is ruchi asakti. So to attain steady spiritual elevation. So that's all we have for today. So thank you for your time. Hare Krishna. If there are any questions or any reflections, we can take right now.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya
Hare Krishna.
Ananda Prabhu. That was a great lecture.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just look at.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Very well, thank you so much. It's very nice lecture. Pruchi, I was more looking at systematic versus random, right? The random association with the spiritual knowledge gives unsteady elevation versus systematic, right, which gives steady elevation. So
Yes.
how do we, if you look at bhakti knowledge, right, whatever we do in ISKCON, it's mostly based on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam.
Yes.
And the knowledge, whatever we associate, is also based on Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And we try to implement the principles of bhakti. So
Yeah.
within that also, there is some kind of systematicness that we need to maintain, or overall knowledge source itself is good enough. Or what does it refer to? Does it refer to hearing from a one particular spiritual master in one particular direction, not hearing from multiple speakers? How do we understand that?
This is a very, very good question you have asked. And but before delving into the answer, I just want to point out something here. So in this slide, when we see there is information that we get. So this is of course applicable to both spiritual and material in a sense, just this flow alone. So there is information we get which translates to impressions in the heart in the form of samskaras. And over a period of time, repeated exposure, systematically building upon that instead of randomly, creates a strong bhava, strong affinity, strong disposition toward one kind of practice. This is really being faithful in our orientation to a particular bhava that we are trying to cultivate. Of course, this is a more spiritual concept, but at the material level also this applies. So if somebody is meditating every day that I am going to be a great runner or a great scientist or a great teacher, so slowly over a period of time, that is the kind of orientation one is developing inside, and the Paramatma guides the person accordingly to seek out that kind of a like information or help and so on circumstance. So similarly, when one is hearing from different either I'm not going to say speakers, but different unrelated concepts and not solidifying any of them within oneself, then what one is doing is repeatedly getting spiritual samskaras, and they stay disconnected for some time, unable to give rise to a coherent bhava. But over a period of time, with patience, utsahat, nishchayat, dhairyat, so with patience and enthusiasm, when one continues the process, slowly they solidify. Even systematic listening also doesn't happen overnight. One takes a few months of journey into the Bhagavad Gita or a few years, and then slowly over a period of time the concepts stabilize. So in case of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, so the main suggestion based on my understanding is, first we should have a good knowledge of tattva. So that is why in Bhagavatam you can read both from a rasika lens as well as a tattva lens. So from a rasika lens, when we read, we only relish. We see, okay, how nice, okay, Krishna is doing that, Krishna is doing that, this. So but when we read from a tattva point of view, we can appreciate why Krishna is doing particular things to particular devotees in one manner versus the other to another set of devotees and so on, or why that particular set of devotees are acting in one way versus the other and so on. So this kind of reading with tattva level understanding helps our buddhi, whereas the rasika level understanding helps our manas. So the mind ultimately need to be focused in Krishna, and for that buddhi is considered higher than the manas. So indriyani paranyahur indrebhyah param mana manasastu para buddhir yo buddhev paratastu saha. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the intelligence is higher than the mind. So if you want to take your mind and engage it in something, first we observe that the mind is chanchala. It keeps going here and there, here and there. It doesn't like one particular thing. One day it likes something, tomorrow it likes something else. To steady that mind and make it relish that same book for a lifetime, like we hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gadadhar Pandit reading the same pastime and relishing it again and again and again. Now for a normal person, if they are going to read the same story again and again, it would just bore them at some point, or they may even not want to open the book for a few days. Why? Because the mind is chanchala and not completely purified, and there is no ruchi, there is no taste as a result. So when the buddhi, by strong knowledge of tattva, can hold the mind strongly and engage it, then what happens is slowly the purification starts happening systematically. It's like either you throw a light and try to burn a piece of paper. You throw a torch of light for a long time, for many years. After that, it may burn. Or you focus it with a piece of glass, and the focused rays can burn the piece of paper. Similarly, when we are doing a directed, systematic study, what we are doing is we are engaging the intelligence. That is why Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, whoever is reading this piece of knowledge with great faith, for them they are worshipping me through jnana yajna. So he says that's because the intelligence is thoroughly engaged, and I don't remember the verse exactly, but it comes in the 18th chapter toward the end. So when the intelligence is thoroughly engaged, it has the power to engage the mind. So therefore, first tattva level or systematic understanding is regarded of value, especially to those who are intellectuals. If somebody by previous samskaras is spontaneously getting attracted, purvabhyasena tena eva hriyate hyavashopi saha jigyamsurapi yogasya shabda brahmadi vartate. So if somebody due to previous impressions in bhakti is getting attracted to Krishna's pastimes, and they are happy reading it, they have no questions about why Krishna did this, why he did that, he's just simply relishing. That comes after several lifetimes of extended bhakti sadhana practice, and they are the ones who are almost present. So therefore we cannot compare one with the other devotees, but in general this is a very helpful guideline to have a systematic reading. That's why when we read through the purports, there are some initially we are asked to complete a set of books, like which give us firm philosophical grounding based on which we can build. And same thing in Bhagavatam also, it's mentioned that before we can appreciate the sweetness of Krishna, we have to be mindful of the greatness of Krishna. So the first 9 cantos. But all these statements point toward the fact that our buddhi needs to be convinced before the manas can find its permanent satisfaction in bhakti kriya or bhajana kriya. I hope it is helpful, but I tried to explain in my words.
Yeah, I understand, Prabhu. Thank you. Yeah, we see in Srila Prabhupada's life also, he quote this Vyavasayatmika Buddhi,
Mm.
aka Purana, right? He
Yes.
dedicated his life to the single instruction of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then he molded his entire life to serve
Mm.
that particular instruction.
Mm.
Mm.
That's a very good point. Yeah. So centering our life around a particular uh, you know, instruction, particular bhava, is it helps us focus also and grow in that particular direction. Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you.
So yeah, for a general sadhaka, it could be something challenging to find out his own uh,
Yes.
spot
Yes.
where he can focus, right?
Yeah. It takes time. Usually, like all these things take a lot of time because we have created the material impressions also over many lifetimes. So slowly it happens, but surely it does. It's a bhakti path. There is the guarantee because of Krishna's and Guru and the Sadhu's grace.
Yeah. I have a second question, but I will take it later on once Prabhuji. Please.
Yeah,
Okay,
if there are
it's
any
a
other
very
questions.
very interesting topic. Actually, it's a topic not just for lecture but for debate and discussion. Excellent topic.
No, thank you.
Um, thank you, Prabhu. I was just distilling it from a because I have an architecture background. So I was looking architecture. We always say the architecture is nothing but placing things at the right place. That's what architecture is all about.
Mm.
And the way I'm looking at it is this knowledge of spiritual knowledge, the hierarchy of various among spiritual principles. Also, there is a hierarchy. Like for example, you just now mentioned, right, that intelligence is higher than mind, soul is
Mm.
higher than intelligence. So once we know that, then even if we hear something contradictory, even within our bhakti, the various speakers, we should be able to debate, discuss, and place them at right place so that, and that is what is the systematic study. Systematic study often involves discussing with other devotees, like-minded devotees,
Mm.
and so that we don't have doubt. So I completely agree with you there that when we do systematic study, then our our devotion or our faith becomes much more stronger. It's very hard then for Maya to take us away from that.
Mm. Mm, that's very true. Yeah. I mean, this whole journey is, in a sense, it's of faith. So initially
Yes,
there is
yes,
some faith, at the end there is complete faith, so much so that we get so much absorbed in the spiritual reality that we become part of it.
yes.
So
Absolutely.
it's about faith and conviction. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Rohinilal Prabhu, for your contribution and discussion and questions. uh, Also, so I think we'll close the session. It's 8:42. No? वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनन्तकोटिवैष्णववृन्द की जय।
Jai.
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य आनंद प्रभु की जय।
Jai.
शिला
Gautam
प्रभुपाद
Krishna
की जय।
Ki
गौर
Jai.
भक्तवृंद की जय। Thank you, dear
Thank you,
devotees, for
devotees.
taking time from your busy lives and coming to this Wednesday online session. We do have sessions on Saturday morning and morning in the temple and online, and again in next Wednesday in this online only class will be Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare